Hi and welcome to the continuation of the array prototype for the reduce method. And in the previous video we saw how we use the native reduce method. We explained that the current is, at first, the current is the second item in the array, the previous is the first one. We process those items with a function. Then during the next iterations of the callback, the current value is going to be that item, the current item, and the previous is whatever the function returns after the first iteration. We explain in two ways, but we're going to use our own reduce function. We're going to create it in order for you to see how it works. So let's create a function called reduce. We're only going to accept an array, and the process function, and the body of this function is going to be a little bit complicated, but don't fear. I'm going to walk you through each step. And actually, let's prepare some values before we start, because we don't want to find any errors later. So var greater score, comma, sum of scores. So we're going to say reduce the scores array. We're going to create two more functions. And we're going to use those functions here in the reduce. So I'm going to do a comparison here, and we're going to sum these scores, and I think we're ready to start working on our function. So let's start by creating a temporary empty array, which we're going to return. Actually, no, what am I thinking? The reduce function doesn't return a temporary array, it returns a value. So we create a variable called current and previous. We also need a len. So as we have been doing during the previous videos, length -1. So you might be wondering why -1. Well, we're not going to iterate all of the items. Well, I mean, yes, we are going to check all of the items, but we're going to only iterate. For example, in this one, this is 7 items long. We're going to only iterate 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're still going to start from 0 in the for loop. So let's say for var I equals 0, I is less than len I plus plus, or plus equal 1 if you prefer so. So in this loop, we're going to set the current item to be the let's see, ri plus 1. So the first current value that we're going to take is the second item in the array, and also the previous value is going to be array I, or this one, but only during the first iteration. So we need to check if I is strictly equal to 0, we do this. We assign prev or previous to the first item. Because I is going to be 0, we're going to grab this item, it's going to store it into prev only if it's the first iteration, or meaning I is 0. During the next iteration, this is not going to take effect. So let's say, and the core is always going to be sorry, the current index plus 1. So the next one. This is why we subtract 1 to the length. Because if we don't, we're going to go here and it's going to try to grab the next item, but the next item doesn't exist. So let's see what happens. Imagine I have core equals 350 plus no, actually, yes, core equals I'm not the one I'm doing this, 350 plus undefined, because the next item in the array here is undefined because it doesn't exist. I'm going to get a none, which is not a number. This will cause errors in our code, and we're not going to get anything. So that's why we subtract 1 to the length. Let's exit, clear. And okay, so I have a current and a previous, but we're going to return, so prev equals process. We're going to process the current and the previous. Make sure it matches current and prev. It's not prev and core, it's core and prev. So the prev now is going to equal whatever this process function returns, so that during the next iteration we have set already a prev value. Since this is not going to take effect, we now have a prev, and a core is always going to be the next item. So what happens if I return prev? Why prev? Why not core? Because prev is the value that keeps accumulating or storing the value that we want. Let's see how that happens. So we get undefined, but why? Well, that's because we haven't reduce array, because we haven't declared our functions body yet. So in compare, we're going to return a plus, no, if a is greater than, so remember a is current and b is previous. So if a is greater than b, we return a. If not, we return b. And here we used the sum of the items. So we get the same values that we got before doing our own reduce. I hope that makes sense, because, okay, let's go through that again. It's going to take an array and a function. We need to set the current and previous value outside the for loop. And the length is going to be -1, because we're only going to iterate over the array. Whatever number of items the array has, -1. Because we're going to start counting the current as if it was the second one. We're going to keep going, and we're going to need to stop here and not here, because then current will be undefined, and previous, if we process previous as undefined and process an operation with current, which is a undefined, we can get some nasty stuff like not a number, or still get something but not what we expected. So we subtract 1 to the length, so we loop, we start from 0 as usual. Only during the first iteration the previous value is going to be 100, as we explained in the previous video, and the current is always going to be the next item. And then we redefine, or at least during the first iteration, it's going to be redefined as the return value, so that during the next iteration, previous is whatever was returned, and we can then process again for the next iterations. And we returned the value. And that's it. A little clarification if you don't understand what this syntax is, a little bit weird. We can comment that. So this is called a ternary operator. It acts as a comparator. It evaluates the boolean inside these brackets, I mean these parentheses, and it places whatever value you establish in between this column here. So this is equivalent as if a greater than b, return a, else return b. And during functions, this is a bad practice or a bad pattern. It's better to use the ternary operator. We set the Boolean comparisons here, or the evaluations. If it's just one evaluation, we don't need the parentheses, for example. So let's say is valid. We append a question mark. The value that I'm going to place if it's true, let's say, else, and we end it. We can also do expressions like, and we can separate by commas. But this is basic. You should already know this. If not, well, you'll learn something new. And this is everything for today. I hope you understand how reduce function, or method should I say, how this function and method works. There are other libraries out there that have these methods. One of them is my favorite, is called Lodash. And the other one is underscore JS. I prefer Lodash because for me it has better speed and efficiency. So if we go to the documentation of both, you see they have filter, reduce, and map for each. So feel free to use this instead of the native ones, because I feel these are better implemented. And see you in the next series. So this is all for the series, and I'm very happy that you bear with my mistakes, because this is my first series, my first set of tutorials. I plan on getting better, get a better microphone, practice my pronunciation skills. So I'm very happy that you're here. Okay, goodbye.